In 1513, a man sat in a small farmhouse outside Florence. He had just been arrested, tortured, and stripped of everything he had built over 15 years of public service. His hands still bore the marks of the strappado, a torture device that had dislocated both his shoulders. To pass the time, he wrote a short book. That book has been called the most dangerous text ever written. Every dictator in history has read it. Every president, every CEO, every person who has ever held real power has either read it or unknowingly followed its principles. And almost everyone who talks about it has completely misunderstood it. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli, and what he actually wrote, versus what most people believe he wrote, reveals something deeply disturbing about how power and money really work. Here is what your history teacher almost certainly never told you about Machiavelli. He was not a cynical man. He was not a villain. He was not even, by the standards of his time, particularly ruthless. Niccolo Machiavelli was born in Florence in 1469, the same year Lorenzo de' Medici came to power. He grew up watching the most sophisticated political system in the world operate at close range. At 29, he became the second chancellor of the Florentine Republic, a position of enormous responsibility. He negotiated with kings. He managed armies. He observed, with the precision of a scientist, how power actually behaved in the real world. For 15 years, he watched what rulers said and what they actually did. He watched what worked and what destroyed people. He was, in the truest sense of the word, an empiricist, not a philosopher who theorized about how power should work, a scientist who documented how power actually worked. Then, in 1512, the Medici family returned to Florence and the Republic collapsed. Machiavelli was accused of conspiracy, arrested, and tortured. He was innocent. He was released. And he was exiled to his small farm, forbidden from entering the city he had served for 15 years. In that exile, he wrote The Prince, not as a manual for evil, as a record of what he had witnessed. Let me tell you what The Prince actually says, versus what popular culture has told you it says. Popular culture version. The Prince is a manual for tyranny. It teaches that it is better to be feared than loved, that rulers should lie, cheat, and destroy their enemies without mercy. What the Prince actually says is far more subtle and far more disturbing. Machiavelli's central argument is not that rulers should be cruel. His central argument is that the world does not operate according to how we wish it operated, and that anyone who bases their decisions on how the world should work, rather than how it actually works, will be destroyed by those who don't. He wrote, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good." Read that carefully. He's not saying, be evil. He's saying, if you choose to be naive about human nature, the people around you who are not naive will use that naivety against you. This is not a philosophy of cruelty. This is a psychology of survival. And here is where Machiavelli becomes directly relevant to your financial life in the 21st century. Because every principle in The Prince applies, with remarkable precision, to the psychology of wealth, competition, and power in the modern world. The people who have read The Prince and understood it are not the villains in your story. They are the people sitting across the table from you in every negotiation you will ever have. Here are the 3 principles from the Prince that every person in business, finance, or any competitive environment is already experiencing, whether they know it or not. Principle 1. Appearances matter more than reality in the short term. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This is not advice to be fake. This is a psychological observation about how human decision-making actually works. People make decisions based on what they perceive, not what is true. The investor who looks confident gets the funding. The candidate who appears competent gets the job. The negotiator who seems indifferent gets the better deal. Understanding this is not cynicism, it is literacy. Principle 2. It is better to be both feared and loved. But if you must choose, fear is more reliable. This is the most misquoted line in The Prince. What Machiavelli actually argued was not that you should make people fear you. He argued that love, by which he meant people's goodwill based on self-interest, is conditional. It disappears when it becomes inconvenient. Fear, by which he meant respect for consequences, is more durable. In modern terms, the business partner who respects your boundaries because they fear losing the relationship is more reliable than the one who says they love working with you. Principle 3. Fortune favors the bold, but boldness must be prepared. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a river that floods violently. When times are good, people do not build defenses. When the flood comes, they are destroyed. The wise person, he argued, builds dikes and channels during the calm, so that when the flood comes, they can direct it rather than be swept away by it. This is, word for word, the most sophisticated description of risk management ever written. 500 years before modern finance theory. In 2002, psychologists at the University of British Columbia published a landmark study on what they called Machiavellianism, a personality trait defined by strategic thinking, emotional detachment in decision-making, and a willingness to use manipulation to achieve goals. Their finding was uncomfortable. High Machiavellian individuals, people who naturally think the way Machiavelli described, are significantly more likely to achieve positions of power, accumulate wealth, and successfully navigate competitive environments. Not because they are evil, because they are realistic about human nature in ways that most people are not. But here is the part of the study that no one talks about. High Machiavellian individuals also show significantly higher rates of psychological isolation, difficulty forming genuine trust, and a specific form of emptiness that comes from never being able to relax in a relationship. Because when you have learned to see every interaction as strategic, you lose the ability to experience interactions as genuine. Machiavelli himself understood this. In his private letters, not in The Prince, but in the correspondence he never intended to publish, he wrote with devastating honesty about the loneliness of being someone who understood how power worked. "I love my country more than my soul," he wrote. And then, "I have no one to talk to." The man who wrote the definitive guide to power died isolated, forgotten, and broke. So here is how to apply Machiavelli's psychology without becoming what destroyed him. Lesson 1. Understand the game without becoming the game. Machiavelli's mistake was not that he understood power. His mistake was that he had no life outside of it. The most sophisticated use of Machiavellian thinking is to understand the strategic reality of every environment you operate in, while maintaining relationships and spaces that are deliberately non-strategic. Know the rules of the game at work, but have a table at home where the game is not played. Lesson 2. Build your defenses before the flood, not during it. Machiavelli's river metaphor is the most practical financial advice ever written. The time to build your emergency fund is not when you lose your job. The time to diversify your income is not when your primary source collapses. The time to build relationships is not when you desperately need them. Fortune favors the prepared, not just the bold. Lesson 3. Read the room, not just the contract. Every financial transaction is also a human transaction. The number on the page is only part of the deal. What does the other person actually want? What are they afraid of? What would make them feel they won, even if you got everything you needed? Machiavelli spent 15 years studying the gap between what people said and what they did. That gap is where all negotiation actually happens. Learn to read it. Niccolo Machiavelli died in 1527 at the age of 58. He died having never returned to political life. The book that made him immortal, The Prince, was published 5 years after his death. He never knew the impact it would have. In his final letter, written weeks before his death, he described a ritual he had maintained throughout his exile. Every evening, he would take off his dirty work clothes, put on his finest robes, and sit down to read and write. He wrote, "I enter the ancient courts of ancient men, where, received by them with affection, I feed on that food, which only is mine and which I was born for." The man who had spent his career studying power had found peace not in wielding it, but in understanding it. Here is the question he leaves us with. Are you studying the game you are playing? Not just playing it, studying it. Understanding the psychology of the people across the table from you. Understanding the forces that shape the environment you operate in. Building your defenses before the flood arrives. Because Machiavelli's real lesson is not that the world is cruel. His real lesson is that the world is legible, if you are willing to read it clearly. If this changed how you see power and money, subscribe. Next week, Nikola Tesla, the genius who died penniless, and the psychological system that turned the most brilliant inventor in history into a financial catastrophe. See you then.